The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today in the show we have Mark Arnold and Mark Slade, two writers and creators of the book Crazy, the magazine that dared to be dumb, which goes into the history of the Crazy Humor magazine created by Marvel Comics as sort of a, them getting into the industry against the others like MAD and Cracked. We talk about it quite a bit in the show. Mark and Mark are both fantastic guys and great writers who put together a really cool book in a really kind of forgotten part of Marvel's history. When I was talking to a friend about this project, saying like, hey, talk to these guys who did this book, he said, I didn't even know that Marvel had done, a humor mag like this. And most people don't. But Marvel had tried their hand at quite a few things to try to keep into what other people were doing. They got into the horror world, they got into the comedy magazine world, they even got into the underground comics world, trying to compete with guys like R. Crumb and Harvey Pekar. So it's sort of interesting when the big conglomerate, I know Marvel Comics didn't hit its stride until it became part of Disney with the massive amount of wealth it has. But even at that time, when they were sort of considered one of the big ones, they were still delving into trying to do underground comics to try to match how big the underground comic scene had become, which is very interesting to me. And we chat about that a bit and a lot about the work that went into this, the history of the magazine itself, the creators. It's a long list of cool creators that had all done cool stuff with Marvel down the line and had big roles. And they get a bevy of interviews from all these bigger names in comics. So it's a great book, very expansive, out now and available, and we'll talk about it on the show. But it would be a good Christmas gift for the Marvel fan in your life or the humorist in your life. It's fun talking to a couple. I think these two are the first that have reached out to me to be in the show. I know people have in the past, and if someone has and I've had them on the show, I apologize. But I feel like someone had, but it never worked out that we actually got to do the interview yet. So I think these are the first two that have reached out and actually we had the interview. So very cool. As someone who loves doing the show, a lot of work goes into the recording, to the editing, to the making of the graphics, the social media. I do it all, folks. I do it all. And sometimes it makes it just a hair easier when someone can bring me some cool guests or they can introduce themselves and we can get the show going. So if you're a fan, if you're a listener, if you're a creator in comics, if you know someone that's involved with comics or art of any kind, really, writing, directing, acting, hell, even music, anything at all, I'll chat. I'll probably chat with them. So tell them to drop me a line. It's a great way to sort of get yourself out there and to help me keep that content machine churning. And, I really enjoy having great conversations with creators, so that also helps as well. Hopefully things are going well with you as this airs. We're now into December. It is now the holiday season. If you are a fan of Christmas like I am, you may be getting a little eager. I do love the holidays. I do love Christmas. It's a very fun time of year. And, I got to get a jump on my Christmas shopping. As I recorded this, it's a few weeks before, so not quite there yet. But I do like to be eager and a bit Johnny on the spot when it comes to that stuff, get it out of the way so I don't have to sit in my head and think about it too much longer than it needs to sit in there, because there's a lot of stuff going on in there. So the less I have to deal with, the better, is my general rule of thumb. But yeah, so it might be time to think about the Christmas shopping. But if you're thinking about it, you should think about this book, because it is a great resource and a super fun read. And yeah, a lot of history and a lot of stuff you didn't know about some of the earlier days of Marvel, especially their jaunt into the humor world. So yeah, if you want to know more about it, why don't we just talk to the creators? Here it is, my chat with Mark Slade and Mark Arnold, the creators of Crazy, the magazine that dared to be dumb.
All right. How are you?
Good. I'm going to try to keep it not as confusing to me with the double marks. So, for those listening, I guess Mark Arnold, go ahead and say something,
Hello, this is Mark Arnold. How are you?
and Mark Slade.
Hello, this is Mark Slade.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show, guys. I think you might be the first people I've ever had in the show that reached out to me to be in the show, which is awesome. Which I'm very happy about. It means it's working. I've been doing it for a while now, and I've been very ambitious about going after certain guys and get them on the show. And I'm always it's actually really touching to have guys like yourselves reach out with such a cool project that fits into the show and something I would absolutely seek out if I'd known about it.
Right.
So I'm really glad to have you on.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let's start with you, Mark Arnold. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Springfield, Oregon, the home of the Simpsons,
Ah.
and
Have we confirmed that? They're pretty vague on what state they're
they
in.
confirmed it. Actually,
Okay,
they
good.
did about 10 years ago.
Oh, awesome.
They actually had a little celebration here, and they put a little mural up, which amazingly is still on the wall. And
That's
then
awesome.
now, since that it's been declared the official Springfield, people pop up with little unauthorized drawings of the Simpsons painted on various side sides of buildings and on ramps and things like that. So if you come out here, it's getting to be a virtual Simpsons land. So
Yeah.
yes.
Well, that's really great for the town. I know it was kind of assumed that it was Oregon.
hmm
The every time it came up, like I think Matt Groening had said, like if you're paying attention, you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's
He
funny that
finally confirmed it.
yeah,
Yeah,
the cat's
about
out of the
10 it
bag
was
now.
about 10 years ago, yeah.
Are you from Oregon originally?
No, I'm from California. I'm in from the Bay Area, San Jose area, San Francisco, stuff like
Oh
that.
wow, very
Mhm.
cool. And how about you, Mark Slade?
I'm in Southwest Virginia.
Oh, okay. You're from there originally?
Yeah. No, I'm originally from Williamsburg, Virginia, but
Nah, so, still Virginia.
yes.
Awesome. Well, let's get started, I guess, as far as I usually get to do a little walkthrough with your guys' lives before we get to the project, so maybe I'll kind of flip-flop between you. But Mark, what was your, like, what started comics for you? Where was your first comic, sort of?
For me, they were just kind of always around.
Hmm.
I had no idea how to get them or what. Just people would give them to my sister and I was the one who kind of really glommed onto them and stuff like that. But we had a variety of comics. We had Harvey Comics, Archie's, Marvel's, DC's, Gold Key, little of everything. And just over the years, you get a few of them here and there. And then, there's certain ones that I got attracted to more than others, like the Harvey comics and stuff like that, Casper and Richie Rich. And I started buying them, and then I started finding out that they were worth some money, ooh, like everybody else does. But and then I became obsessed about collecting everything. Humor magazines came in when I was about 7 years old. I started off with
Really?
Mad, and I've said this story before that the first one was the Mad Super Special 14 with Don Martin posters. My
Mm.
sister found it in a grocery store, and we're looking at it. Oh my God, this is the greatest artist ever! And I got hooked. And then quickly after that, started buying Cracked and Crazy and all the other ones. So and I still buy Mad to this day. So there we go.
Really? Wow, that's awesome. It's funny because I remember as a kid, it was always Mad. Like I don't remember like I live in Nova Scotia, Canada,
Mm,
and you go to the local place where they sell magazines, there'd be a spinner rack with comics, and you'd always see Mad, but that's the only humor magazine I ever really saw. I don't know if it's just there's a obviously I'm aware of the others, and your wonderful book it does go into a lot of what else was out there at the time. And I did remember like what because at the used bookstore I would catch the Marvel What Does issues,
mhm.
which were always sort of like their comedy parody of themselves. But Mad was always everything. And I remember the first time I came across, I think it was a Cracked magazine. I was really surprised that there was something else. Like it just was very shocking to me. I was like, "There's another magazine doing this," and yeah, it was kind of eye opening for me. But seven's kind of a young age to come to the comic, the comedic book. Yeah,
I know. I was a early bloomer, I guess.
yeah,
I even started reading things like National Lampoon by the time I was like 9 or 10. You
yeah.
know, and I used to buy it even, and then they suddenly slapped on the cover It said the humor magazine, and then they put for adults. And as soon as they put for adults, I couldn't buy it
Oh
anymore.
no,
So I had to get my mom to buy it if she would buy it for me. It's like, damn it. Anyway.
that's awesome. How about you, Mark Slade? What brought you to the comic party?
Oh, well, my brother Doug, he always collected it, and yeah, he would get his comics in the mail or whatever magazine. It always came in a brown paper bag, and I was curious what it was. And one time I opened it, and it was Savage Sword of Conan. But that wasn't the first one. The first one was Ghost Rider. I was probably 6.5, 7, in the grocery store with my mom, and I saw it, and she bought it, and I was reading it and had nightmares. And then she said I couldn't read it anymore, but yeah, right. I went and read that thing again and again, or at least looked through it. I don't know how much of it I actually understood. I knew what the devil looked like. I knew all that, and Ghost Rider was pretty cool. And of course, seeing the Savage Sword, and Electric Company brought me to Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So,
That's not often a path I hear about. When I have a lot of reverence for the Electric Company, and I don't hear people talk about it as much anymore. I didn't realize that, to hear that it brought someone to Spider-Man is very cool.
it was Morgan Freeman playing Easy Reader.
Yeah.
He would read, let's follow our friendly neighborhood web slinger, and and I don't know if that was really the first Spider-Man I saw, but I remember it as a young age as the one when Gwen Stacy died, with that iconic cover and everything. I don't know if that was the first Spider-Man, but the second one I do remember was Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man #1. I actually may have bought that one. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't think I could have. My mom probably bought it. And then for school, they made a notebook of it. You open it up, it's a binder, and they had that on it. And my first day I took it, and somebody stole it.
No. It's funny you bring that one up. So I spoke with someone recently. I think it might have been Stefan Petruccia, who's a writer, and he'd worked on X-Files comics for Topps and other stuff like that back in the day. But he mentioned that when he sort of fell out of love with Marvel was when they killed Gwen Stacy, and it was mostly because he'd read some article in the back of some magazine where they talked with the writers, and they're like, "Well, we had to do something with her, and we didn't really know what, and we couldn't, so we just figured we'd kill her off." And he was so upset that the fact this character he really loved was just written out of the book. Because the writers didn't know what to do with her and couldn't be, inventive enough or imaginative enough to give her some kind of a story. They just killed her off.
Well, and Stan Lee was very upset about that. Well, originally they wanted to kill Aunt May, and that's a no-no. You cannot kill Aunt May.
They've done it like 3 times already.
Since Stan Lee has been gone. Since he's been gone, But he said, no, you can't kill her. And so they had to sit there and explain why, and he goes, "Oh, all right, go ahead."
Yeah. Did you find the humor mags as well when you were young? Is that something that you had?
Yeah. When you open up, like especially Savage Sword of Conan, the magazine, you would see the advertisements for Crazy, and you're like, "What is this?" And then, of course, by the time I was looking at it, I guess Howard the Duck had come along. I don't know if Howard the Duck was in Crazy, but at least his comic book was being advertised the same time. And I was like, why would they make a character that talks, a duck that talks? I don't get this. Even as a kid, I didn't understand it. Not until I got a little older, then I was like, oh, it's brilliant. It's funny. Steve Gerber. But that's how I found Crazy. But years later, I think I told Mark this before, years later, I think I was probably 9 or 10. And I didn't realize it was either the last issue or next to last. I'm not sure. But they reprinted Casper, their parody of Casper and Police Story, the TV show, which they call Police Gory Story. And then Casper gets his revenge on abusive father. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, why would anybody do this to Casper? Because I love Casper, And but then I'm like, as I'm reading, I just start laughing, and I was like, this is great. And then I think in that same issue, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, they had their parody of the Smurfs.
Yeah, and that was the last issue.
That's what I thought.
Until they did a new issue more recently, but that doesn't count.
Right. No, but seeing Papa Smurf sitting there and he's watching porn, and I'm like, what? This is
That's the interesting thing when you find parody as a kid, right? Because your brain doesn't discern that there's a company that owns it and they're the ones that make it, and this other thing is making fun of it. To you, it's just all the Smurfs. So when you see the
Right.
Smurfs, you just think this is the Smurfs. I think I had a similar, and maybe it was the same issue, but I remember seeing something with like, like
Yeah.
Smurfs having sex or something. I was like, what the hell is this? Like,
Yes.
like they don't
Or
do that.
or Vanity Smurf when he
Yeah,
discovers he doesn't have genitals. I was
right.
like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
And of course, Mad Magazine, like Mark said, has always been around. And I've never been able to find this. I'm pretty sure it was Mad, but they had a parody of the Who, and was it Athens or one of these structures that was completely destroyed, right? And they said the Who's concert last night, and I was like, this is awesome. That's exactly true. But I haven't been able to find it. I don't know if it
Yeah.
was Mad or it's cracked. I know it
Yeah.
wasn't crazy.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
It's
who
often
knows?
interesting to me too how much of a different voice. Like even though they're all sort of parodies, there's definitely a
Yeah.
a voice they each have that's different. You can kind of tell if someone gave you a page from Correct or a page from Mad or a page from Crazy.
Yeah.
Which is which. You could kind of tell if you read enough of them because there's a discernible. I don't know if the humor is on a different level because they're all have their own sensibilities, the writers, whatever. But it was always interesting to me how unique each voice was for each sort of parody
Right.
book. Yeah.
And Mark can tell you more about that because I mean, in the book, he starts way at the beginning, like in the
Yeah.
50s.
Well, we can get into it, I guess. What do you guys like as writer? Like, what do you guys do for a living outside of creating books like this?
Well, I
Right
work in.
now,
Oh, you go ahead, Mark Slade. We'll start with you.
Okay. Okay.
I work for a warehouse, so
Okay, right on. Awesome. Well, no, I'm super impressed. Like that.
I just right now when I was writing this, I was working 2 jobs.
Wow. Well, how about you, Mark Arnold?
I
Did
work
I?
in. Oh,
Hey,
Oh,
is it?
I think you were a little buggy there. Oh,
Okay, well,
all
I'll
right, you go
continue, I
ahead. Yeah.
guess. Okay, okay, yeah, you froze up there a little bit, Mark, but yeah, I work in healthcare. I'm an office assistant, and but in the past, I've worked for newspapers and TV and things like that. So,
Awesome. That's
but
cool. Well,
yeah, the writing is, I would love to have it to do the primary thing, but the thing about writing, you don't get steady
knew I
paychecks.
would.
You don't get
Shoot,
uh
I keep for.
oh,
you don't get health care, you don't get any benefits or anything. So yeah, I have to keep a regular job.
of course, yeah. Well, I mean, hey, the sheer passion that comes with the love for the material really bleeds through in the book. And I was talking to someone about this recently, about how the passion, no artist gets into comics saying, I'm going to make my millions being an artist by doing comics. Like you have to be passionate about comics and bring your art style to comics. And it's the
Mhm.
same with such material like this, right? Like it's you have to have a real passion for it to it needs to want to come out of you for it to go to the amount of work that it takes.
Mhm.
So yeah. So how did this book particularly come about?
Well, I did a cracked 2 volume set about 2011.
Hmm.
And there's a weird story on that. I didn't want to do it because I didn't think anybody cared about Cracked. And my publisher was the one who found out that I collected these things, and I had every issue of Cracked at the time. And he
Hmm.
goes, "You should do it. You should." And I go, "Does anybody care?" And I go, "Okay." So I did it, and he wanted me to follow it up immediately with the Mad history, and I really did not want to do a Mad history. It
Well, that's a
wasn't because I
long,
hated him. Yeah,
extensive, yeah,
that's why,
yeah.
and I put him off, and my publisher doesn't remember doing this. And I go, "Oh yeah, you've asked me many times." Finally, around the time of the pandemic, although I started it right before, I said, "Okay, I'll do the Mad book." Because I figured Mad's now in reprints, it's kind of effectively gone, it's done, and I go, this is an opportunity to kind of, cover the whole 70 plus years
Hmm.
of what they were doing. And so that took about 5 years to write.
Wow.
And it came out this year also, earlier this year. And then, my publisher, which is Mark's publisher too, uh, he did, he says, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Crazy." And he says, "Oh, these other guys want to do crazy too, as Mark and two other guys, Chauncey and I forget the other, Mark Slade, if he gets back on here, can say.
Hmm.
And they had written a Marvel book about, Bronze Age Marvel with all these interviews and everything like that. And initially I was like, whoa, that's a lot of people. But then Mark's friends actually were too busy to commit to the crazy book. So it was just Mark and me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that works.
Yeah.
We tell it from different perspectives. I was collecting it, even though Crazy started in 73, I didn't see it until like late 75. And, like you, I never saw it, and then suddenly oh, what's this? Another one. And so then I was immediately hooked, and so I kept on with that one. Issue 15 was my first issue. Well, I got a super special. They had a standalone annual that was incredible, and it had all those early crazy stories that are great. And I became like an avid mad and crazy reader. I would be with Cracked every so often. I would stop reading Cracked for a while because I didn't think it was as funny. I love the John Severin artwork, but so I'd stop reading Cracked for a while, and then they'd lure me back. They'd say free stickers, free postcards, and I go, okay, I'll buy Cracked again, and then I'd stop again. But Crazy, I kept all the way through once I started reading. Mad all the way through.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
Hey,
Well,
sorry about that.
oh,
I had to switch. I had to switch to my phone.
no, it's all
Okay.
good. Good to have you back, Mark. Mark Slade. It's funny because
Thanks.
it's almost like I was like, I don't actually think I have to do much editing because you kind of like you slipped out right in between when we start talking about something else. So,
Oh, okay.
oh, that's great. So yeah, what brought you Mark Arnold had mentioned that when when he had reached out or when he mentioned to his editor that he was looking to doing a book on Crazy, that you as well were already attached to an interest in that. So why were you so involved on that level?
I'm gonna be honest with you. This was one of the, if I was going to do nonfiction, this was one of the two books I wanted to do, and I ended up doing both of them.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, my friends Lothar Tuppen and Chauncey Hallworth, we did an interview book with the Marvel creators of the Bronze Age.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one goal I always wanted to do, was to find out, was there a real Marvel bullpen?
Mm.
And I also wanted to do a book about Crazy Magazine. Even as a teenager, that was one of the things I just wanted to find out, how they created this, why they wanted to create it. And I had no idea about the previous versions of it from Stan Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen Not Brand Ec until probably when I was a teenager. Then they might have reprinted a story or two somewhere. I think they reprinted a Thor parody in Thor.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wanted to do something on Crazy. I wanted to find out why and how they made it.
Yeah. Well, there's these big pockets of I remember I gave my brother for Christmas one year and I was looking at the bookstore and I got one for myself that was so interesting, but it was the when Marvel was trying to compete with the underground comics. So it was like Marvel's version of underground comics. It was a collection of all of that. And Marvel obviously had gone in to do the horror, they sort of were watching what other folks were doing and were sort of going on, they did their horror brand, which kind of got wrapped up with the EC stuff. They did they're trying to do their take on the underground comics thing. So it's interesting that of all those things, obviously the parody books and the comedy books, they fell in line with that as well. So I didn't realize it went back as far. I was flipping. I didn't have time to read the entire book. It's because it's expansive, but it's awesome. And I did get a chance to flip through and read some various things, just to give me some insight into what you guys are working on. And I'm a big Steve Gerber fan and Wolfman fan, so it was cool seeing all that stuff. And Larry Hama as well. Hama's a little bit of my white whale for this show. I've been trying to get him. I've talked to a lot of people that have worked with him, and a lot of people connected to him, and I've reached out to him, but I have yet to. I'm hoping it'll still happen. But
he's elusive. He's elusive. I don't think he's doing very well health-wise.
Oh, really?
Might be one reason. We spoke to him. Well, I sent him an email. I tried to get him for the Marvel book, and I misspelled his name, and he got a little upset at me. So about a year and a half later, I couldn't get him on Facebook because he had made it to where you couldn't, unless you were already a friend with him, you couldn't message him. Mm-hmm. And a couple other people that we were getting for the Crazy book gave me his email. And so I sent it to him, and he said, "Oh, I definitely would be interested in this." So we got some questions from him, or I got some questions to him. We got the answers. I think it was back in June, right? Mark, when I sent
think
him
so.
an email asking if he would write the introduction,
Oh yeah.
and he said, "What? There, there's a book on crazy?" So I was like, "Well, yeah, you sent me the interview,"
Yeah.
and then I didn't hear anything from him. But in one of the interview emails, he had said that he wasn't doing too well health
Oh,
wise.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
So
That's a shame. I did meet him briefly once at they have a Comic-Con in Halifax, which is the capital of Nova Scotia. And he was there one year. It was I think it was at Hal. Yeah, it was HalCon. And so I got a chance to meet him very briefly. And this is before I was doing the show or anything. And he seemed very pleasant then. But I've heard from others that have worked with him or careers have been kind of shaped by him about
yes, that's true.
He can be a bit crabby, but he has a heart of gold. So that's sounds like it. But no, it's I learned a lot, even just realizing how far back this gone, like way farther than I even realized. Like it's extensive work you guys did.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
I just
funny.
wanted to go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. It's
Uh,
fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that, the reason why I wanted to go back that far is just to kind of show that crazy just didn't come out of nowhere, that they had toyed with various humor magazines over the years. Stan Lee did, and you know, they were mildly successful. This crazy magazine was their most successful humor publication. But so Mark mentioned Not Brand Ec, that only lasted 13 issues.
Mhm.
You go back to the original Crazy, which is a comic book in the 50s, it only lasted like 7 issues. So it's like, they had these little short spurts, and they tried a humor magazine in the mid 50s called Snafu. It only lasted 3 issues, and that was more like the black and white Mad magazine of that time. So,
Yeah, it's very interesting, and like I said, you guys did a pile of work on this project, which is super cool. I guess like getting into the you guys do really extensive write-ups on like all the people involved with these books. There's a lot of these like this creator, this artist, who they were and where they came from. Did you feel like it was important to have it like give a voice to those people that are probably not remembered for like this expansive work they've done, or is it just a matter of trying to be as encompassing as possible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Especially someone like Maris Screenies. I think I pronounced her name wrong. Screens, who worked with Steve Gerber and Steve Skeetes a lot. Also, Lee Mars, doesn't really get mentioned in a lot of stuff. Oh, shoot, Bob McLeod. Bob McLeod hardly gets mentioned, and he worked on the X-Men books. Helped co-create. Was it Excalibur? I think.
Mhm.
So he doesn't get mentioned a whole lot
I think he did
for his work.
New
New
Mutants
Mutants,
was his
New,
creation.
the New Mutants. Sorry,
Yeah,
there were
that's
so many X-Men books. Who could keep up with it?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and even to an extent, a lot of people don't know that Marv Wolfman wrote a lot of humor.
Mhm.
There's a lot of humor in his work anyway.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I did feel that, but I think mostly that was Mark's idea to do the who's who.
Mhm.
A lot of it, we wanted to represent the people who created, but we couldn't get interviews with them, obviously, because they're probably dead or not available.
Mhm.
And it was Mark's idea to do the who's who.
Yeah, I enjoyed it because like sometimes you'll see all the like someone you've never heard of before and like get a little insight into what they've done. But also like just mixed within them are these like titans of the industry that like if you read comics or you have a reverence for comics in general, just the superhero books.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Whoa, Roy Thomas, like Marv Wolfman, Steve Gerber." You're like, "Wow, I didn't know how involved."
Yeah.
Gerber makes sense because it's like as you mentioned, as Howard the Duck was very very comedic and
Yes.
going back to look at those, I bought that big omnibus that had all of the Man Thing and the big omnibus that had all of the Howard the Duck. They sit proudly beside each other in my library on the shelf. And, you can definitely see how he would have came from a world like this or been drawn to a world like this because it was very much his sensibility.
It's too bad he didn't stay with it. It's too bad that Gerber didn't stay editor. It was starting to, even with one of the last issues that Wolfman was doing. Say from issue 8 to the time he stepped away, it was starting to turn into something different from the other humor magazines. It was a little bit of National Lampoon, quite a bit of Mad, but then it was something else. It was something all their own. And there wasn't a whole lot of making fun of superheroes yet in it, you know?
I always say this that, and Mark figured this out himself, that, if Crazy only published the first 14 issues and just canceled at that point, it would be just the most incredible humor magazine you'd ever
It
seen.
would
And
have.
it's like,
Yeah,
if they never did anything beyond that, it just still would have been like, wow, why did they stop then? This is great. And unfortunately, it devolved for a few years into just a standard, humor
yeah,
magazine with just average stuff. And then Hama did come back the last couple years to kind of revitalize it, but it was never completely the same as when Wolfman and Gerber
right.
did it. Those first 14 issues are just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise
But
me in the least.
I think the problem was Paul Lakin. His humor is more vaudeville, still stuck kind of in the 50s. And the writers that he had brought with him, but he stayed there the longest. He was
Yeah.
there the longest. Like 4 years? I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about 4 years.
It's
And
wild to
some of the
me.
parodies were still good. Some of the parodies were okay.
Yeah.
It's wild to me the scope of like what the writers' room of a place like this would have been like. Like I recently watched the Saturday Night Live movie Saturday Night about the making of the first night of Saturday Night Live, and
Oh yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was pretty solid. But you look at like the sheer scope of these people, and they have
yeah,
actors playing them all, and some of them were quite good. And just how insane that world would be, like just all these crazy personalities kind of like doing all these parody stuff. I think we tend to romanticize it in a way. We think it's like, there's a monkey on a tricycle driving by, and people are marching bands and all kinds of crazy rubber chickens being thrown around. It's probably more mundane to sit in the office and watch them working on it. But in order to have the sensibility to bring about something so crazy like this, and no pun intended,
yeah.
they must have been some wild get-togethers and hangouts and some amazing personalities in the room. So,
Especially when you're talking about the core 70s creators of Marvel and DC, they would all get together and go to somebody's apartment. Well, the book in the interview with Steve Englehart that Chauncey and Lothar and I did, he admitted that before going into a Doctor Strange story, he and Frank Brunner would smoke a joint.
That made sense. That makes sense.
It did. But that had to be probably the best period of Doctor Strange, though, because it was very inventive. The stories were unusual, and they were very good.
That's what it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I can imagine that there were some office parties that were very wild. At least we hope.
Absolutely. What would you? Oh, you go ahead. Keep going, Mark.
No, I was going to ask now, Mark. Was it Paul Lakin that used to do it from his kitchen table?
Yeah. His story is that his wife died sometime in the early 60s, and so he had to raise his two children, who also worked for Crazy, as teenagers. One he went by the name Aaron Mayer, but he really was Aaron Lakin, and his other daughter was Eden Nora, but her real name is Eden Lakin too.
No.
And but yeah, they would do it from their home, and everybody would submit things to the office, but they'd get it forwarded to the home, or sometimes they'd submit. Yeah, but he actually, when I interviewed Paul Lakin years ago because he also edited Cracked for a while too, they would lay it out on the kitchen table or on the bed or something, because that's back in the days before computers. You just had to lay everything out. You needed room to do it, so that's where he was doing his editing, and he'd send it all in through the mails. Wow. And it was done that way for like Mark said, for 4 years, and nobody knew the difference. I thought he was in the office in New York. I didn't know any better.
Right.
Well,
Mary Screeney had said that her and Gerber used to edit in her apartment. So the 3 issues that they did, because she was pretty much co-editor, but she didn't get the credit.
Right.
I don't know how much the writing she did on it. She probably doesn't really know either, or can't remember. But they used to, on their floor, get Chinese dinners and lay it out and just go to work on it.
It's amazing.
I think stuff like this, like humor magazines, were always considered like second class or second rate or something. So they didn't
Yeah.
care. Like if you were working on the top book, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, whatever, you better turn your work in, turn it in the office, or even come in the office or something. But this stuff, as long as it comes out. And that's one good thing about Crazy. It did get to a monthly schedule and actually came out on time. uh,
Yeah.
I
as long
love
as it
her.
came out, nobody cared. It's
I love how it's like how everything gets tiered in the world. Like regardless of what you're working on, when they're like uh the idea that like the people doing the humor mags are like the bottom rung where the superhero people are above them. But then like at that point in society, comics were not at any kind of a high level. Like it wasn't they were enjoyed by the people that love comics, but they weren't considered I mean, I would assume they were considered high art or what we consider them to be nowadays, because they certainly were pretty disposable and mostly children's fare is what the adult world probably saw them as. Those who
Right.
weren't in the know,
Right.
right? So,
Right. Well, even Marv Wolfman had said he would have stuck with it if he was paid more
hmm.
for the book. But he also had Tomb of Dracula going on in various, I mean, you name it, the comic book in the 70s he was working on. And he was probably, he was sending stuff to DC as well. So,
Well,
I
I loved your write up for Stan Lee, by the way. That one made me laugh the most. It was like he's some nobody. He worked on Millie the Model, and it's a Monster Madness. Nothing good came.
that I can't take credit for that
was
one.
I wrote
very
I
that one.
can't take
Well,
credit.
I
That
did.
was Mark Arnold.
I did a similar thing in my Disney book, where it's called The Stars of Walt Disney Productions,
Mhm.
and I put Walt Disney in there because he was the voice of Mickey Mouse. So I said, well, he was technically an actor. So
Mhm.
and on that one, I put, if you don't know who Walt Disney is and you're reading this book,
Yeah. Just throw it away and go watch the
yeah,
movie.
exactly. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with Stan Lee and Marvel. If you don't know who Stan Lee is at this point and you're a Marvel fan or consider yourself a Marvel fan,
Mhm.
um, you know,
Wow.
so
Uh, so what was like one of the more surprising things you found when doing research for the book?
surprising things. Well, yeah, like you mentioned the earlier history. I
Mhm.
didn't know much about that. So Mad came out as a comic book in early 52 or late
Mhm.
52. And so all the other publishers had to come through with their various versions. But Marvel, as typical as they were to kind of oversaturate the market, they didn't come out with just Crazy. At the same time, they came out with Wild and Riot all at the same time, which
Mhm.
is probably why they were all short-lived, because they just kind of canceled each other out.
Yeah.
So I never knew that they had done all that at the same time. Um, the other thing that was kind of revelationary was, well, the things we just talked about, like Paul Lakin doing it at home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I learned this when I did the Cracked book, because a lot of these people I interviewed for Cracked years ago, and part of the reason I did that is, I had the foresight to thinking I might be doing another book. I should ask them about when they worked at Crazy and stuff like that. And if I don't, well, at least I have the interview, and it was good because a lot of these people have passed on. So
Mm.
I was allowed to use that in these books. But a lot of the things I learned back then, I was like, wow, these things are kind of done on a shoestring. They're kind of second class, and meanwhile, Mark and I are eating it up like this is the best stuff, manna from heaven, but it's just like, we'll put out another magazine, here, okay.
That's the beauty of loving something that's so esoteric, I guess, to the mainstream is that like, it means so much when you find little facts or little quibbles. Like, I feel like in the world we live in now with the internet and everything is so accessible that the days of like just getting a tidbit of information about something, like when you just had to find it in the back of a magazine or do some research or read some article or some book or something that gives you the insight, but you couldn't just go look up everything you want to know about everything, right?
Mhm.
So how about you, Mark Slade? What would be something that some of the things you found most
Ah,
surprising?
just about the entire thing was surprising. Um, well, what about their movie parodies? When they ended up doing Blade Runner, there's a cameo. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a cameo of Larry Hama, and he's fixing sushi. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty small. It's probably at the bottom.
Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Now you're.
Yeah.
So, there was things like that. The Scott Edelman, who was an assistant of assistants. He wrote some comics as well. Now he's a kind of a successful science fiction writer. But what was the advertisement, Mark? Berserk.
And it was
Berserk.
like some sort of like judo or kung fu type thing, and they used to have these ads running in the regular Marvel magazines, even the comic books, of I can teach you this special martial arts trick. And in real life, the actual guy actually died around the time.
Oh, really?
The thing, but Crazy managed to get in a parody right before that happened, and Edelman was chosen to represent this guy because he had this wild hair back then and a beard, and he just looked crazy. And so they took all these photos, and there's photos of him in the ad, and also they used some of the photos elsewhere in the issue because he just took these fantastic photos of just him going
Yeah. And that's another thing that was pretty cool was Marv Wolfman's ex-wife. Is it Michelle? I think it's
she's
Michelle Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was the photographer for a lot of those early issues and those photo comics that she took. And quite a few of them. There's Roy Thomas and who's the other guy? It's oh my goodness. Well, Roy and his ex-wife.
There's a few in here that I've noticed. There's one with Stan Lee that's like a photo comic, and a few others too. But...
They love to do those Fumetti things. Harvey Kurtzman used to do the Fumetti things back in the 60s in Help, and I think that's where they got the idea. And my favorite one is The Last Supper because of who's in it. I mean, they got like animators in there like Willie Ito, and
I had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
But I recognized a couple filmmakers in there.
Yeah, and they may not have been known then, but they are known now.
No.
So,
yeah.
And but it's kind of strange that some of these and some they like Dick Giordano's in there doing, and what's the other one? Neil Adams is in one of them. He's like sucking his thumb.
They're selling houses or something like that.
Right, the
real
Great
estate.
American Dream.
Yeah. And Tony Isabella, he's in a couple. He's in one where he's a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then whenever they would do a parody that was kind of like off color that probably they couldn't even publish now, they'd have Jim Owsley is his name then. What's his name now? He changed his name, but back at the time,
I can't remember.
Yeah, but his name at the time was Jim Owsley. But he'd put on this big afro wig, and he'd be Dr. Jive Turkey, and he would say, now we're going to do a period of the Flintstones with the Brownstones and make all black cast. And it's like they can't get away with that.
Oh God, no.
What about Paul Laken era? They did Wetback Magazine.
Wetback Magazine.
Oh my.
Which, when I first saw it, I laughed, but then reading it, I was like, "Oh, come on! This is too vaudeville, man. You could have done a little better than that." If they'd have tapped into, I don't know, somebody else to write it for them, it would have been a lot funnier. The racist part of it is what makes you laugh.
Yeah. Well, with the amount of interviews you guys had too, like how did you find that the reverend, like people were happy to were people, because you mentioned at the time people weren't super, they felt like they were doing a lesser comic, or at least were seen as that, or lesser book amongst the comic world. Were people happy to talk about it? Was it something they thought was I wouldn't call it embarrassment, but were they proud of the work and eager to talk about a little known part of their career, I guess, that they didn't talk about often?
Yes. I don't think we would have been able to have gotten somebody like Marv Wolfman unless you added, we're doing a book on crazy. Because no one else would. Larry Hama's the same way. He doesn't want to be asked the same questions. He wants to talk about G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind talking about G.I. Joe. but all the other stuff, maybe Conan a little bit, but the other stuff he doesn't care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, even just seeing
oh
DeFalco in
man,
here too, right? Like I was just looking through some of the lists of
Oh,
people
yeah.
you guys talked to, and I was like,
DeFalco was a coup, I thought.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
Mark got him. So,
yeah, and quite extensive. Like it's a
yes.
very long interview.
Mhm.
He was really cool. But I think mentioning Fantastic Four was a sore spot
Mm.
because the fans kind of got at him. I thought he did pretty good.
Mm.
You know, I thought there were people after him and before him that didn't do what very well Fantastic Four. And that's
Mm.
what I was trying to tell him. And then when I reworded that, he went, "What? Pretty much."
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well,
But he loved talking about crazy.
yeah.
Nice.
And he didn't mind talking about being editor in chief either. A little bit. I wanted to find out his relationship with the previous editor in chief, who was not very well liked
Mhm.
anymore, or even then.
Yeah.
So
I
he it was surprising that they got along. It really
Mhm.
was.
Mhm. I found out doing interviews over the years. Like I did an interview with Bill Morrison for the Mad books I did,
Nice.
and he did not really want to talk about getting fired from DC and Mad, after a single year because it's embarrassing,
Mm.
and it's like it's not the most, it's so I interviewed him. I said, I really need to talk to you about this, and we'll be careful. I won't, dig in too deeply, but I really kind of want to know. He did finally open up, but it was after an hour of talking to him about The Simpsons
Mm.
and everything
Yeah,
else that he did. And then,
Roswell.
I think that's what happened with Tom DeFalco. You loosen him up by
yeah,
talking about all the other stuff. So finally he said, okay, I can say a little bit about the management situation and stuff that
Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
want to
Jim
talk about.
Shooter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he was very open about Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
He didn't really mention that other creators disliked him.
Mm.
Hmm.
He just said he wasn't very well liked and he
Yeah.
was pushed out. But he also said it was mostly higher management that wanted to get
Yeah.
rid of Jim
Yeah.
Shooter. And even now, he's very controversial. And it's been, what, 40 some years since he
Yeah.
got pushed out?
Yeah, I know. It's
And
amazing what
and
still
even
sticks,
Tom,
right?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he didn't really take care of the creators like he claims he did,
Hmm.
but I don't know. But there
Yeah.
was some others that, Paul Kupperberg. How did we get him? Because now he has cut himself completely off
Yeah.
from
I
anyone
think
trying to
you
get in
got him
touch with
again.
him.
So it's like, I don't know. It's you.
I don't know. I don't know how I did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I told him that we were working on Crazy, and he was like,
Yeah.
"No one talks about Crazy."
Yeah.
Sure, but
Yeah.
then I think he got a little upset with Mark because he wanted to ask Mark. Mark wanted to ask about Alan, his
Yeah.
brother,
And I thought it was
and he
okay, but apparently that was not good. I was
No.
like, oops, so he cut
he
me
talked
off.
about him a
Yeah.
little bit. He talked
Yeah.
about him a little bit at the
I mean,
beginning,
I
but
was
then
wearing this very shirt. I'll stand up,
Oh
which is
yeah.
drawn by,
sure
yeah,
was
Yeah.
you know,
absolutely,
and
Wow.
he says, "Oh, my brother drew that." So I thought, oh, if he's feeling reverent to this artwork,
yeah,
he'll talk about him a little bit. And I didn't want him to say, "Oh, praise the brother." I just wanted him to say, "What, did you get
Yeah.
along with him?" Apparently,
Yeah.
there's a little friction there,
Oh yeah. Well,
even after his death, unfortunately. But you know,
well, brothers, right? I mean,
but there
hey.
was
yeah,
others. There was like because me and Mark run the Marvel Comics Crazy Facebook page,
Mhm.
whatever it's called. I just
yeah,
know it's got Marvel and Crazy in it. But I was posting a bunch of stuff. I was posting the art. I was trying to get people ready, when we release it. And oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. Who was the main artist, cover artist, Mark?
Oh, Bob Larkin.
Bob Larkin.
Yeah,
Bob Larkin makes a comment that I wish I had been interviewed.
yeah,
How many emails did we send? How
yeah.
many messages?
I mean, I tried to get Bob Larkin when I was doing my crack book because, like I said, it's like, why stop here? I was just trying to get a lot of interviews, and
Yeah.
I said I'm going to be talking to Sergio Aragones again. I talked to him back in the crack book, and the only reason I talked to him back then about it is I was just curious. How come you never tried to be at Crack? Don Martin went to Crack, and I wasn't expecting him to say, oh yeah, I'll jump ship and go to Crack. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to get his opinion on it because a lot of people
Right.
did jump ship and go to
Yeah.
Crack. And
Absolutely.
it's kind of like the whole comic book industry in general. Even though everybody says I have my allegiance to Mad, they've been at all of them pretty
Yeah.
much,
Oh yeah.
I have
Yeah.
my allegiance to Marvel. Well, they all work at DC too,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's so dumb to me that you have an allegiance in that way to like just the name of the brand. It's like really, it's so
Well,
incestuous. Every creator goes to every other one and comes back and goes off and does their own thing and still comes back. And then, like it's just, it's circular. I usually follow creators, not that I like, not necessarily the
yeah.
companies. Although Spider-Man for
well,
me
it
has
was
always been
different. It was different for me, especially in the '80s, because my older brother had drilled it in my head that Marvel was better than DC.
Mhm.
But looking in his collection, he had DC.
Mhm.
He
Yeah.
he collected the Shadow and Batman,
Mhm.
Green Lantern a little bit. Superman, oh hell no, he
Yeah.
hated Superman. But but you know, you would find a handful of Eries. You'd find some Warren stuff. You'd find a little bit of the oddball stuff. And in the '80s, me and my younger brother, we collected whatever. You
Mhm.
know, if I saw something that I really loved, like there was a run on Batman that was great in the late '80s,
Mhm.
and I was like, I've got to get that. That cover is awesome. And then in the '90s and late '80s, the indies. With Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and everything else that was coming out. Jeff Smith's stuff was coming out. I had to get it. You know, so my allegiance to Marvel fell off quite a bit during the '90s, and even more so in the 2000s when they stopped using black ink.
Mhm.
And it's just all color, and I was
Mhm.
like, ugh, this is too vivid. I like shadows.
Yeah, no,
So
I agree. I agree too. There's a certain style to it that is kind of missed. Well,
it
what
is.
I guess like the book's out now, right? Is it available
Yep,
now? Yeah.
Yes.
right here.
Yep.
Yeah,
There it
that's awesome.
is.
Yeah. And right,
Crazy
Yep.
the magazine that dared to be
Obnoxio in the
dumb.
crowd there. I love that quote at the beginning. One of my I almost wanted it on my tombstone is like the very first quote in the book. Which says he's a quiet man doing his
Um.
own thing, going his own way, daring to be dumb.
Yeah. I thought that would be funny to include because the parody itself is of Alfred E. Newman
Mhm.
as Alfred Old Man,
Yeah.
but it's got the Nebbish,
Yeah.
and me and Mark both agree that the Nebbish isn't that great of a mascot. He doesn't really do much.
No.
Obanoxio is much better,
Yeah.
you know,
Much more iconic to look at for sure.
Mhm.
and
Um,
and he hates everybody, so that's great.
But we had to get the
But
Nebbish
there's
on the cover,
also
so
yeah,
we
it's a
added
beautiful looking book.
it.
And like the Bob McLeod Ford is beautiful too. I read that. I love the Westworld parody that he did. All
yeah,
that stuff is gorgeous. And it's such a reverence. Like I said, as anybody that's into comics or old books like this, and deep history of these sort of worlds and the people that have made them. It's awesome. It's so expansive. It goes through everything, and gives you such insight to these characters, and also showing the branches, where they went
yes,
and what they became
yeah.
and how they started maybe doing this funny book, but they went on to do some crazy big things. And
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
what about Robert Graysmith? I meant to mention that. I couldn't remember his name. That's why I didn't mention it. You know who Robert Graysmith is?
no,
Uh, okay, the Zodiac killer.
oh,
He is one of the people. No, he's not him,
okay. I
but
was
he's
gonna
one of the
say,
Oh, no.
people. He's one of the people who tried to crack the code,
really,
and he got so obsessed that he wrote like 3 books about it.
Yeah.
really,
And the Zodiac movie is based on his books.
wow.
Yeah, he was a cartoonist working for San Francisco newspaper, and Marv Wolfman. I asked him about him, and he said, "I know who Robert is. I think he sent us some stuff, or I may have got in touch with him because I loved his art, but I had no idea he was involved with the Zodiac. He didn't know.
Wow,
So that was a revelation that was great.
wow,
Yeah,
Probably two
interesting.
big alumni from Crazy that it was kind of surprising because at the time you're just reading this stuff. Bob Camp went on to do Ren and Stimpy
Yeah,
show and
yeah,
was the head of the company basically for after John Kay got kicked out. And
that's right.
the other big one is Ray Billingsley. He started as a kid artist in this magazine called Kids. Crazy was his first professional work, and then he's done the comic strip Curtis for newspapers for like 40 years now or something.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
So
wow.
you know And
And that's great that I've had comments from Camp and Billingsley on the Facebook page. But man, well, Mark already had Ray's interview, but I couldn't get Bob Camp. I
yeah,
sent him probably like 20 emails,
Hmm.
and I sent him a couple of messages. But I guess he's just, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
he didn't want to be bothered, but he don't mind. He didn't mind commenting,
Yeah, some people
seeing
just
his
like to
own art.
comment. I've learned that
So
too. Yeah.
They don't
yeah,
want to give
Um,
the time to do the
yeah,
whole thing, but they'll
yeah.
come along and give you
Yeah.
the okay after the fact,
Oh,
I guess.
another big one that got bigger later, and he recently passed away. In fact, he passed away while we were working on the book, so we didn't get him, obviously. Bob Foster, he was just doing
yeah.
Moose and Moose Kind, and then he headed up Disney Comics for a decade and
Hmm.
was doing the Donald Duck comic strip in the newspapers and all sorts of stuff for years, you know. So,
Wow,
yeah.
amazing. Do you guys like how long's the book been out for now?
About a month, I
Oh,
think.
excellent. Oh,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
current.
And it's available in all the normal book places?
It's available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. You can order it direct from our publisher, Bear Manor Media.
Yes.
Nice.
And
It's also Thrift. I think thrift.com. You name it, it's come out now.
Beautiful.
It took it a week to start to spread out, but
Mhm.
they got it everywhere. And I have to say that the reason it got done so quickly, mostly, was because Mark already had a whole ton of interviews
yeah.
and articles.
Well, I
So
was gonna ask about the I don't want to keep you guys all day, obviously, but I was gonna ask about like the art. Like, is this all because you guys had extensive a collection, like you, Mark, you mentioned you had an extensive collection of some of it yourself, but like, is this all
uh,
from your own work, or where did you guys manage to track down all the artwork from all the magazines?
Well,
online.
the stuff that's from Crazy, yeah, we got
Yeah.
online, or I have every issue in my collection, so a few
Hmm.
things I scanned that weren't online.
Hmm.
As
Yeah.
far as some original art, like there's an issue number 9 that Kelly Freas did the cover for, and they went through like 4 or 5 cover versions before they ended up with the one that they ended up with, which was completely different. But I found on Heritage Auctions like 4 different versions where it was supposed to be around the end of Watergate, and it had Nixon on the cover for a while, and it had tape recorders in the White House. And by the time they got the cover ready, Watergate was over because Nixon had resigned. So they changed the cover completely, where it's just the nebbish flashing everyone with all the previous magazine covers on it. Like they did that in a quick moment because they said there's no Watergate, no Nixon anymore, But
Wow.
I thought the work in progress covers that Freeze did were fascinating, so I said we got to put them in there, and I gave Heritage Auction credit for having those available,
Yeah.
things like
That's
that.
amazing. You guys
Yeah.
have any? Oh, go ahead,
I don't
Mark.
want to mention the online website that we use because they've had so much trouble.
Hmm.
And I don't want to, if somebody is listening who is a creator of
Sure.
some of this, they might complain about them. And
Hmm.
I want that online website to stay forever because
Hmm.
it's great.
Yeah.
And I will say this, if anybody at Marvel or Disney is upset that we used any of the artwork in the book, I do put a disclaimer in there saying we printed
Yeah.
everything pretty small, and it was because we want to encourage you to go out and buy some original magazines.
Yeah.
They still
Yeah.
exist. They're not very expensive unless you get the one with the Kiss cover.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair
uh,
enough. Fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah, and but I mean, it's not like the first Amazing Fantasy number 15. I mean, the most an issue is, except for that one, is probably just about 20-30 bucks. Most of them are about $5 or less.
Yeah,
So
and those are books that are being resold by people that, but they're not. The money's not going to Disney or Marvel now. It's going to the guy
yeah,
that bought it the first time that's
yeah.
reselling it or whatever.
And I hope that the positive thing I hope is I mean, Marvel did do a crazy anthology back in 2019 with some new material, and they did a brand new issue. It wasn't
Mhm.
quite the same, but it was all superhero focused and everything like that. So I'm
Yeah.
happy they put something out, but I wish that they would go back and put out like a compilation of like their humor stuff, the parody stuff, the stuff that really made crazy funny,
Yeah,
and put out another edition. So hopefully this will kind of prompt people at Marvel to say, maybe we should relook at this stuff that's just sitting in our archives.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, like there are people like yourselves and me as well that are interested and passionate about, the comics world and what came before. And yeah, this is definitely an amazing expansion and journey through all of that. So thanks for putting it together, guys. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Very well. Do you guys have another project in the mix, or is this it for now? Yeah?
Yes,
No,
we do.
we
No?
do.
No, really?
You want to say it or me?
Are you allowed to
No,
talk
go
about
ahead.
it? If
You
so, go
say it.
ahead. That'd be
Okay,
awesome.
it
Oh
is
yeah.
Plop. Which is one of the reasons, again, I'm interviewing Sergio, because Sergio Aragones was a big proponent behind Plop. He's working on House of Mystery and working for DC as well as MAD.
Hmm.
And, we just need to get more information about it, because over the years, any interview with Sergio, he talks about Plop, but not very much,
Hmm.
but he's very proud of that stuff. As
Awesome.
well as Gru and everything else he's done. But and he called me up the other day and said, "Yes, I will talk to you." He's all enthusiastic. And I go, "Wow," it's like, okay, so,
I
I'm going to
often
be,
talk about on the show how he's one of the sweetest people. I met
yeah.
him briefly at a Comic Con where I gave him a copy of a comic I created at the time, and he told me to come back the next day. Him and Stan Sakai were side by side, and they said come back tomorrow because it was a Friday and the con was going over the weekend. So I came back the next day, and they'd given me a ton of notes. They read it at night and said they liked it, and here and you could improve here, you could add this, and I was always very impressed because that was above and beyond what they had to do to just some nobody that dropped off a little indie comic they made. So yeah,
That's pretty nice of them to do.
he was very sweet.
And,
So I was very impressed with him, and always have been.
and Mark and I have already interviewed Monty Wolverton, who's the son of Basil Wolverton.
Oh wow.
And unlike what I thought, Monty loves his father. He loves to talk about it. He has an extensive knowledge,
Mhm.
so it's like, and we got some uncut artwork, as it were, because sometimes the cover artwork that they used on Plop, they edited like a foot or took off a
Mhm.
body or something like that. But he gave us
Yeah.
the uncut version that we can use in the book and things like
Oh,
that.
that's
So,
awesome.
another one
He
we
was
got, and we
really
got for
good.
another one we got for Crazy, but I'm carrying it over into this book, is Dave Manak, because he was elusive for years too, but he did stuff for Plop, he did stuff for Crazy, he did stuff for Mad, and it's like I could never get a hold of this guy, and then I finally got a hold of him for the Crazy book. So yeah.
That's awesome. Wow, cool. What do you know when that'll be out, or is that just in the putting together plans now?
Probably next year, but we're working on it kind of slow. Crazy came out really fast, but like Mark said, I had a lot of stuff already written. I had articles that I had done for Back Issue
Yeah.
magazine and stuff like
Mhm.
that we just
And
kind of
uh and
retooled.
uh
So
and I was writing the reviews of of the issues that I was looking at
Mhm.
while I was working overnight. I was supposed to be working, but I was on my phone and I was writing. So, but it
Excellent.
worked out.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, the
Yeah.
work's fantastic, and the book is amazing. Definitely great stocking stuffer for the Marvel lover in your life, or even the humorous fan in your life. So hopefully those listening will check it out and grab a copy. It's beautiful. It's expansive, and it's a great comic. So thanks so much, guys, for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you for having us.
no problem, and I will send you those those answers soon.
Oh, great.
The magazine answers. Yeah. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
There you have it, my conversation with Mark Slade and Mark Arnold. Very cool conversation, a very cool book, and a very great addition to any stocking at Christmas. Check it out wherever you get your books. I know it's on Amazon, it's probably on Indigo and all the others as well. Check it out, get on there, and pick one up for the person in your life you think would appreciate it. There are a lot of folks out there that love this sort of stuff, and I'm sure if you are into comics as much as I am, if you have the circle of friends you know that I do, one of them would certainly appreciate it as a holiday gift. So check it out and support these guys because they're doing some really cool work. And there's a lot of anybody that knows any history about comics in general know there are a lot of creators out there kind of fell by the wayside because they're forgotten about for various reasons in time. Either only did a few small books, maybe they passed away, maybe they got out of the industry, but their work deserves to be recognized. And for many, some of these people's work is some of their favorite. And it's unfortunate that they have a small well to draw from when it comes to looking at their stuff. But it's always nice when they're highlighted, focused on, and given a platform to show the amazing work they've done in the past. So big thanks to Mark and Mark for bringing their voices to the forefront and putting them in this book. And, highlighting such a cool part of old comic history. So thanks, guys, for being on the show. Much appreciated. Be sure to tune in next week for another conversation with another creator, maybe creators, who knows. That should be fun. And, who knows? But I think it'll be a good ride, as it always is. So be sure to tune in next week for another episode. In the meantime, stay safe, have fun, read some comics, and start that Christmas shopping. It'll be time before you know it. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.